you don't have that kind of fame and that connection with an audience unless it's authentic. Unless you are able to make people feel seen or people relate to a story, whether maybe they are watching the stream in different parts of Africa or any of these other streams.
It might have looked good as an advertiser for MTV, but now MTV is no longer on air.
Do you see what I mean?
And therefore, it just shows...
It shows the age of the people who are trying to steal from us. We are now waiting to see if the provincial government of provincial unity in KZN survives or if it collapses. And if it collapses, the MK could be taking over the premier seat and finally having a taste and a test of power. Welcome to the Hustlers Corner. It's NOTA Monday. I'm RORI standing in for Sbu, who is a little bit under the weather. So we'll be chatting with myself and NOTA this afternoon. Before we start, as you know, Sbu has written a new book. It's called Brick by Brick. And it's a property guide for all you property investors that are out there. You can get this book exclusively, co-exclusive books. So go out there and buy this book. It's a easy step-by-step guide that gives you really great insight. I back it. So check it out. Again, you can buy the exclusive books only, or check out some of our online channels if you would like to get yourself a copy of this gem. NOTA,
how are you doing, RORI?
I'm good.
A long time no see.
Exactly. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, what have you been busy with?
Tasa. We are pushing multiple hustles.
Okay.
And yourself?
Yeah, well, we're back on the Hustlers Corner.
We're back?
Yeah, we've been patchy for, I don't know, a couple of weeks. We're trying to catch up to our old momentum. It's been tough to do. But hopefully, throughout the course of this year, we'll be able to put more consistency behind our Monday episodes.
We don't have to hope, we will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you been catching up on the last episodes?
I have. I was present and I was here when you...
Okay, we started off with the Fadil Adams interview.
Which was a blockbuster.
Really?
I think so. It was interesting.
What did you think of...
I mean...
what do you have to share with us?
For me, at the end of the day, my question always is, you have all this knowledge, you're a member of parliament. What... and he represents a very particular kind of constituency and has particular interests within Western Cape, within the colored community, right? And they're affected particularly by gang violence and all those syndicates and those linkages down there. My question is, you're a member of parliament, you have access to all of this information. What are you actively doing to try and improve people's lives? What are you doing with power? So... I walk away with some of those questions and I'm a little bit sometimes skeptical, but you know what? In terms of where we are with the Madlanga Commission and the ad hoc committee, which I actually want to talk to you about some of the developments that have been happening lately. I'm interested to hear your own thinking, right? Particularly around, infiltration of different, whether it's the Gauteng Metro Police or the, SAPS, even intelligence services. What do we need to do about that? What is your thinking around that? We've got a stacked news agenda, as you know. There have been floods around the country. Kids have been involved in really tragic accidents here in Gauteng. We also have other kind of pressing issues that are kind of surfacing and bubbling up. And for me, I think I want to hear a little bit more about maybe some more daring and bolder actions and some of the ideas that you're thinking about. Does that sound good to you? Okay.
There's that. And then there was the episode that we did 2 weeks ago or 2 Mondays ago. That one, we really spoke about the iShowSpeed experience.
That
more
was
in depth.
Yeah. That was that I was there for some of it.
You were also there running after speed.
Running after speed. I also had people messaging me, telling me, why am I running after this person? Kare ke groupie.
Okay.
And I had to explain, no, we were there for a purpose, and it was pretty cool. I think what was cool about that experience, I think, was seeing the kind of production and the production quality that it takes to pull off such a seamless, not just a stream, but the ability to pull off the stream, to access so many different activities, to hitting all those different marks and doing it so well. I mean, he himself is, of course, an incredibly talented guy, but he's built an incredible team that's able to help him execute. So for me, that was a great experience.
What's his talent though?
I think it's a couple of things, right? One, I think it's a physicality one, right? So he has an incredible ability the stamina, the ability to go across these multiple places, whatever. So the stamina required both mentally and physically to be able to show up at each and every one of those stops in and of itself, I think, is a talent. Right?
Okay.
And most importantly, I think that he's got a very particular kind of curiosity. A curiosity that I suppose it opens him up to the world, and he wants the world to be open to him, and being able to easily switch and tap into every single community, different communities, different activities, different, and switch on but feel very present. Is a particular skill that you've got to hone and develop. And what was interesting and exciting for me is that every one of those stops, right, there were young people, right, who are his fans, who are present, but the communities or the places that we went to, they felt seen, right? They felt they were excited to be part of the experience. So I think how I often describe it is he's a person of people. And it's not just by the by. He truly is and you can feel that in his presence. And he's able to combine whether it's physicality, so he's able to just execute in a production sense of how he does it. But on a human level, it's about that ability to connect, that ability, and that curiosity to see how other people live. What do you think?
Well, I agree. I think we went into it at length even more on last week's episode, where we spoke about our reflections on what we've seen since his tour continued outside of South Africa.
Have you seen what his latest developments in Algeria?
Well, I've seen his North African tour as well, which culminated in the AFCON final as well, a very dramatic end to that tournament. And I also observed just his tour when he went out to East Africa and how the viewership numbers also grew. As South Africans, we get told about how we've got some of the best connectivity in the world, especially on the African continent. Though we do know that our data costs or our cost of bandwidth is rather high compared to the rest of the world. And I think we got to see the opportunity cost in real time with the reactions that came out of the other regions that he went to, where, data costs are not as high and it was more accessible, or the stream was more accessible to people because the costs are reduced. And we spoke at length about how that does not do anything or does not bode well for our creative economy, especially our digital creators. The costs of having to upload content, download content, to view content, all of that means that, the production of content is stunted in some way, and so is the consumption, and also the industry as a whole, is able to make less money because it's so costly for people to participate, whether they're content creators or just consumers. So that's something we went into lengths about. I'm not too sure if I've got any radical solutions for that other than the fact that, we need to bring down our data costs. But it was nice to reflect in that episode on that. And then beyond the whole reflections that we've had in the previous episodes of the Hustlers Corner, what is your reflection on the effect that Speed's presence has had on the kids? Especially, I don't know, have you been observing?
Look, I must be honest, I haven't observed super closely. I noticed I've just been picking up, whether it's on socials, whether it's kind of on news digests, because it's coming up in my feed a lot more. And look, let me speak about it from our perspective, right? Because we saw it live, right? We didn't just see on the stream. We saw it live. I was shocked at not just his reach, but the effect he has on young people and on teenagers. Like it felt to me like being with a celebrity. It was like, I was saying to somebody, it was like being with Boom Shaka in the 1990s at some point. Like I was in a crowd trying to get some video footage. And when I say to you, I nearly got trampled several times because these young people in different areas, these are not like rent a crowd, people who are following at each stop. There's a whole new group of young people at every single stop, at every single place. And the reaction was exactly the same. They were not just inspired, they were super excited in the most insane way. They were hell-bent on making sure that they saw him. So they were going to push you over. They were going to trample you. So it was definitely, it was a throwback with, at least for me, of how fame looks like an experience. I don't think we see that as much in South Africa anymore. So that for me was the most noticeable thing. And that, I guess that's what I meant by that authenticity thing and that connection thing, because people, you don't have that kind of fame and that connection with an audience unless it's authentic. Unless you're able to make people feel seen or people relate to a story, whether maybe they are watching the stream in different parts of Africa or any of his other streams. He's cultivating a curiosity in his audience. And in each, and people are following, but people want to show up as well to be part of that story. It's a very interesting dynamic to witness and to experience.
The part of the dynamic that most excited me was the fact that people are completely unaware of what the kids are into.
Yeah.
So them being so unaware or oblivious to Speed's fame or, the resonance of his brand amongst that audience also was, for me, exciting because it meant that the effects are not shown in the reflections or the reactions that we got. I mean, a lot of our content creators are older people, or a lot of the content that we get to see is older people. So when I saw a lot of older Americans in their 20s, 30s, speaking about seeing Africa for what it truly is for the first time and what an eye-opening experience it was for them, I thought immediately about little children, that follow Speed, the kids on Roblox, I guess your 7 to 14-year-olds and how they are now seeing Africa in a new light and seeing it as a place where they'd want their adventures to be. I think that is going to change the perception of Africa, especially for a completely new generation that hasn't been able to see Africa outside of how it's contextualized in their curriculums, at school. And seeing Africa as something other than a backward, dark place, that's also something that I think we're going to benefit from for, the next coming years. I think Speed's visit for me is almost as effective as the 2010 World Cup was.
I think so.
Yeah, just in terms of the effect on it, I think
what way?
Just his attendance of the AFCON final, right? Apart from the drama that was the AFCON final, I think added more excitement to it once people who were already tired of it. I mean, in South Africa, since we got eliminated, really early, the excitement faded.
Yeah.
Even the venues where the games were being shown were rather empty. People stopped following the entire tournament, but the final is the final and people want to see who wins the ultimate prize. So obviously that would have drawn some excitement. The excitement, though, that I saw drawn amongst Speed's followers and his fans was, across the board and outside of the continent as well. People were being introduced to this tournament and what it means. And I think he did a very good job of narrating the importance of the cup, and then the dramatic story of how the cup eventually was won by Senegal you know, and
Yeah.
all of that, you know, culminated in something that I think encapsulated what his Africa tour was about. You know what I mean? Exposing the essence of Africa and showing its challenges and showing it in its all its all its contradictions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that, I mean, without getting into the particulars of the actual final, what was interesting about Speed when he got to Algeria, I saw clips of one in Egypt when there was a guy who tried to stop his stream when he was trying to give him a green apple. For some reason, I'm
that's the
clearly
code
also
word.
I'm an older person because now I didn't quite understand.
That's why he had green apples in the club. That's how he ends the stream.
Okay.
By saying green apples.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So there was a guy who tried to give him a green apple so that he could say green apple and end the stream, obviously, when it wasn't done. But then there was, he was walking in like a stadium or like in front of a big crowd. And at some point he had to stop the stream because people were throwing stuff at him.
Oh, that's Algeria. Yeah.
And
in Algeria.
So, I mean, do you and the caption, people were saying fans are throwing things. I mean, are those really fans? Do you think that maybe
they're not his fans, but I mean, Algerians, North Africans, we see this in our cup competitions when we're playing football in those areas or when their fans are visiting here. I mean, the last time Algerians came, or I don't know, it was some North African team, some of their fans had to be saved after they started their hooliganism, and one ended up, hanging off a balcony, and nearly fell to his death before, a Sundown supporter showed him some mercy and pulled him off the ledge. That's just, who and what they are. And I think Speed didn't just get to expose it, he got to experience it himself firsthand. And he got to show the world the contradictions, of North Africa as well. They're called North Africans, but they don't particularly see themselves as Africans, and they don't look like Africans either.
And that's what I'm saying. Do you think there's an element of racism and anti-blackness in how he was treated?
Well, of course. I mean, you could see it in the Egypt stream. They had to explain why all the noses are chopped off the statues, to explain why.
Why are the noses chopped off?
Because, the Arabs came in 1640 AD, and after them, I guess, the Romans then conquered Egypt, and through their occupation of it, didn't want any of the statues to show who the true owners or who the true natives of that land were. And it's a case of erasure. That's all it is. The mere fact that the artifacts are being kept in museums all across the world, and kept in museums in Egypt that are, owned by the invaders and not the natives, was just shown in that stream, as well as the multiple explanations they have for their lies or their fabrication to create this myth of Egypt, which is truly Kemet. You know what I mean? There's no such thing as ancient Egypt. It was Kemet, the land of the blacks. Okay. And now, because they've created this Egypt, we now need to play along with a little narrative that does not fit the evidence, that is there. He got to stream from inside the pyramids. I think it was the world's first ever stream within the pyramids. He got to take a microlight flight over the pyramids as well. He got to go to parts of the Sahara Desert in southern Algeria as well. He got to see the differences in the communities in different parts of Algeria, whether it be, in the capital city in Algiers or in the south where he was. He got to go to Marrakesh as well in Morocco after the AFCON game, and got to see, the difference in how people live their lives there. He went to the CR7. I almost said CR17. Yes, he went to the CR7 hotel as well, where he got to put his hands on Ronaldo's golden boot and his Ballon d'Or award as well, which I think, was exciting for him. It was also interesting for me to see that, Cristiano Ronaldo has a hotel investment in Marrakesh in Morocco. I never thought.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I thought maybe he'd have one in Cape Town. Maybe too many Messi fans there. Or too many Argentinians.
Yeah. For me, that was the most, that image really stuck with me in Algeria when he had, because it happened after Egypt, or at least I saw it after I saw some of the clips from Egypt, and I just thought to myself, and there was another clip when he was going through, I suppose, in Rabat, in Algeria, and he was noticing the architecture, and he was like, wow, this is like, it's like being in France. This looks like being in Europe. And I also just thought to myself, I'm like, wow, what an interesting experience it must be to discover kind of, and to physically almost, discover colonialism, and kind of just spatially, without maybe the overt or the explicit knowledge of that this is why it looks like France.
Yeah. Well, other than that, they speak French as well.
And they speak French.
You know what I mean?
Right. So that's again, it's breeding a curiosity within the audience and himself, because it seems like he didn't necessarily go, he might know stuff about the places, but he didn't approach it like, oh, I have this fact sheet already. It was like an observational, like, this looks like this place. This is the similarities. And then drawing of like, why is it looking like that? And you're saying his audience are incredibly young people, and
incredibly curious as well. And so they'll be reading up, they'll be searching.
Exactly. Right. And especially in this day and age when not just reading or access to credible or good information is sometimes a bit rare. It's people don't have their attention spans. People don't necessarily, the way education systems are structured. It's like people like Speed are helping young people to, I suppose, what did we watch? At least what did I watch when I was a child that made me?
Captain Planet.
History Channel. I don't know, but also a lens into the world in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, the lens into the world, also a lens into the contradictions of Africa. On that particular game, I think it was a league or cup final, and a South African coach was representing the team that Speed was supposed to be, or supposedly supporting in Algiers, and they won. So, that's a win, I guess, for the South Africans that were involved. I think one of the former Orlando Pirates players, NOTA, is playing for that team that won. There's even talks of Rulani being brought back into the PSL with teams looking for his signature as a coach after his departure from Sundowns all those years ago. And I guess North Africa is something that, we need to have a look at its place on the African continent, and how it contributes to the social cohesion on the African continent. We've got the conflict in Sudan, which is exacerbated by foreign actors that are also swaying things to try and take advantage of, that resource-rich country. The country had already been divided into two. You've got Southern Sudan and Sudan.
Just 10 years ago.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And we still don't see a resolution to the many conflicts that are plaguing that region. And some of it is contributed to by the fact that there's a dislocation between the North African states and those right in the Sahara belt that are, along their borders as well. And it seems as if those Arab states are a buffer to stop Africa from actually, being a fully fledged continent of Africans. And they sow division and sow discord and create conflict within the regions. I mean, you look at what's happening in Libya, where, sub-Saharan Africans are being traded as slaves to this day. And even since the fall of Gaddafi, the fortunes of the country haven't seemed to improve. There's other places where despots or, there's been deposed heads of state and leaders. There's been coups that have been happening all over the continent, in West Africa, within the Sahel as well. But then you still see, in Cameroon, a president like Paul Biya still holding on to power. In Uganda, you've got Museveni still holding on to power there, and not actually having any credible opposition, because any of the opposition in Uganda is seen as either leaning with Western forces that are trying to destabilize the country, or doesn't seem to have the trust of the majority of the people. I've seen the frustrations of Bobby Wine also complaining about the vote rigging within that region. But one thing that I haven't seen a unilateral support for his presidency from Ugandans in general. And whether that be
Museveni.
For Museveni, I mean, he is the incumbent, and therefore, his critics will be many. But as far as him being replaced with Bobby Wine, I haven't been able to observe a call that I can say that, unilaterally from across all sections of Ugandan society, they would want Bobby Wine to be, their leader. So him having so much support from outside of Uganda, and especially from the West, does mean that he is seen as someone that is, acting with foreign influence backing him. And therefore, there'll be a lot of mistrust for him. And this is the same sort of mistrust that I had for Duma Boko in Botswana. We're moving swiftly along across from the regions.
Yeah. So before you get to because it sounds a little bit. It reminds me of Morgan Tsvangirai, the way you are framing or you're thinking through the dynamic within Uganda.
I mean, you could say the same thing for even Nelson Chamisa, in more recent history, and he comes from the Morgan Tsvangirai party, originally, and the same thing happened in Botswana, I think, with Duma Boko rising in the elections, and Masisi not being able to secure a second term. And already Masisi's presidency was challenged by the previous incumbents. Ian Khama even came to South Africa and said he was exiling himself because, his life was in danger. Yeah, dramatically so. And I don't think Botswana has seen itself descending into political violence or turmoil in that manner. For him to actually think threats to his life would be credible. But, it's happened, and they've successfully managed to decampaign Masisi. And, it wasn't until Speed showed us the hypocrisy of Botswana, saying that it owns its diamond industry, yet it can't sell diamonds to anyone other than, the two colonizer partners, De Beers being one of them. And then that makes you think all this radical rhetoric that we've been hearing from Duma Boko, seeing him, shaking hands and rubbing shoulders with the Ibrahim Traorés of this world, attending inaugurations as far as Ghana, that seems to have been all for show, because his public statements ever since, seem to not align with the rhetoric that came before he was elected. In fact, he's vowed to not stick to his election promises, saying to his population that, a campaign manifesto is not a contract. And therefore, if promises are not delivered on, one should not see that as a failure of the political party to stick to its mandates, and rather see it as political rhetoric with the aims of campaigning and winning votes, but not with the aim of actually delivering those promises to.
He said this? Wow.
One's voters. Yeah, he said it in a 5-minute long, monologue, in which he also berated, Botswana's public servants about, not following instructions, tardiness, being lazy, administrative backlog, red tape, and resistance to modern systems and
what
practices.
What was the reaction from the Botswana people?
That's the thing. It's very hard to gauge the reaction from the Botswana people. They are outnumbered by their cattle. So, yeah. So, yeah, you know what I mean? Exactly. So, the mere fact that he was able to ascend to presidency was shocking. as well. I even spoke about it in the previous episode, 2 weeks ago, 2 Mondays ago, about the fact that, he spent his vacation in South Africa.
In the Eastern Cape. Yeah. Issued, he was going to Mgidi season.
So I don't think that the Botswana have the type of radical leader that they can rely on. And also, I think that it poses a security threat for us as South Africans because there are US military installations in Botswana right across our border. And you know that our relationships with the US has been strained over the past couple of months, I'd say maybe a year as well, since Trump's inauguration, of which last 2 Mondays ago was the first year of the new Trump administration in the run-up to the midterm elections in November this year.
Which is, America is also just going through some crazy developments right now. With ICE raids all over Minnesota, people, American citizens who are currently being detained. So basically, some people are describing it as almost like a paramilitary force, right? In order to implement some of the campaign promises that Trump made around immigration, right? To protect not just their security, but things like jobs, and just generally the anxieties around immigration. Right. In America, and in many ways, sometimes some may say that some of the anxieties that Americans may feel, it might not necessarily be in the same exact articulation, but sometimes it has echoes. Some may say with some of the concerns that South Africans might have around immigration. You spoke about the multiple destabilizations across the African continent. I wanted to also say to you, isn't it interesting how whenever people talk about problems on the African continent, they always say in sub-Saharan Africa, disease in sub-Saharan Africa. If you look at development literature, Africa is always sub-Saharan Africa, even but is seen in the international community. But these crises across the continent, in the same way Americans might say the crises and the destabilizations in South America, see huge numbers of immigrants, either refugees, people who are fleeing violence and credible threats to their lives. Some are calling them economic migrants. But generally speaking, there's a sense of for lack of a better word, a sense of lawlessness, right? And people are turning towards or voting for people with at least sometimes more radical solutions, as we're seeing in the United States with ICE. Do you think that in South Africa, it's time for more radical solutions? Or let's say, do you think that the voting public are ready and they want more radical solutions that are a little bit more interventionist in society in order to deal with immigration?
Yeah, I think you wouldn't have any protests if South Africa's Border Management Authority started behaving like ICE. I think they would have wide-ranging support, especially from the general public who are feeling the effects of uncontrolled immigration, because the nature of the uncontrolled immigration is not that we've got immigrants in South Africa that are self-sufficient or that are able to contribute as, working members of society. A lot of them are welfare dependent. And we're seeing that, even our welfare resources have become susceptible to immigration fraud, identity theft. And in some instances, undocumented migrants are able to access things like your SRD grant, your NSFAS grants as well. And in the cases where, there's identity theft, there's even, RDP houses that have, been taken over or been granted or given to, undocumented migrants because they've got fraudulently acquired documentation.
Where do they get
They make it. They can manufacture it. Our Home Affairs Department is compromised as well. There are people working within Home Affairs Department that are able to give people, fraudulent or doctored documents, and we don't have the resources to check if people's identities are genuine as well. And even in instances where we do have those resources, they're not being utilized. So I think across the board, South Africans feel like our border management agency is failing us. I mean, throughout the first couple of weeks of January, we were inundated with videos coming from the border of people, either crossing illegally or people being arrested at the border for attempting to cross without documents. And, in the United States, I think their border crossings have been reduced by the mere fact that people fear ICE, fear how unreasonable or how irresponsible they've been, in their actions. And I think that has served as a deterrent for many people. As for whether something like that would be supported or would work well, I think there'd be lots of political support for it in South Africa. In America, though, although there is broad-ranging support for it, I do see that the anti-ICE protests and marches seem to be creating a groundswell for the Democrats to expand, I guess, a lobby to have change in the form of, midterm elections results favoring the Democrats and trying to make sure that the remainder of the Trump presidency is forestalled in terms of his policy objective, and trying to turn him into a lame duck president in the last part of his final term as president. Yeah.
I mean, it in many ways he'll be a lame duck, but at the same time, it's like being a lame duck with power, being proper. The Democrats, right? As you say, there's this mobilizing force that's responding to some of how ICE is carrying out these raids, right? As I mentioned a bit earlier, seeing some of the news sources last night, I was watching some TikToks and reading some stuff about, and one of the a state representative in Minnesota said that ICE is everywhere. I think sometimes the way it's reported in the news, it's almost like they come in and out, like they're sporadic, right? But the way she's describing it, it's like a Gestapo. She sees people are being pulled from schools, from their homes. Children are coming home to empty homes because their parents have been taken. ICE goes to places of employment where they see that there's a majority of Latinos or Black or Asian people who are working there, conduct these raids, and basically a majority of staff in certain, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's job sites, wherever, will then be seized and taken away by ICE. And this is apparently happening every single day, right? So there that element of violence and that aggressiveness is, I don't know, maybe it looks ugly because it's like they're saying, I wanted immigration enforcement, but not like that. So if we said, at the beginning, South Africans will say, great, right on, we want a response, we want this dealt with. What do you think the appetite for those kinds of images, though, will be?
Well, I don't think there'd be any objections in South Africa. I think South Africans have felt that law enforcement has taken too long to act on illegal immigration, and people have taken matters into their own hands, even having fatalities and, lots of casualties as well because of the ensuing violence. And they'd be relieved to have, the pressure taken off of their hands and see law enforcement actually acting for their benefits. My fear, though, is that we'll only start seeing that action once the electorate decides that that's the only condition under which they'd continue to vote for the ANC. And the ANC has the power to act in this regard, and they're stalling because they're waiting for it to be the last and only resort to salvage any electoral victories, or to, stem the tide where they are losing votes the most, especially in the places where they're losing votes the most. And the party itself, is trying to figure out how they're going to, I guess, lubricate the idea of a Motsepe presidency with the PM27 campaign,
He's already printing T-shirts.
Well, we've already printed T-shirts, there was already an order of over 50,000 T-shirts. So we can say that the campaign is underway, with the only hiccup being how he ends his tenure as CAF president, or whether he then kicks to touch in case, he doesn't quite make it as ANC president, and tries to, extend his tenure at CAF, and possibly even goes for
FIFA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing some of those rumors about Motsepe. But before we go there, I hear what you're saying about South Africans being at a very particular kind of fed up, basically. Politicians like Herman Mashaba, for instance, and they're proposing more radical solutions, like, basically declarations, not of disasters, like declarations of a state of emergency, to respond to illegal immigration, amongst a whole host of issues. And before, I actually just wanted to just outline, because we've heard about state of disasters being declared over the last few months, right? About gender-based violence. I think unemployment is another one. Electricity is another one.
The floods in Limpopo and in Mpumalanga.
Yeah. So we've got these state of disasters, but I don't know. Are they doing anything? What does a state of disaster actually? How's the response from government changed?
Well, I mean, it just means that it's easier to flout regulations to get money for whatever programs are seen as interventions. And that's what the state of a disaster enables. It enables unaccounted for, spending, reckless spending. And it basically relieves officials of having to follow due process whenever they are initiating interventions. And it seems like any national state of disaster is preceded by allegations of misappropriation of funds and misuse, and then the next thing that comes after that, just a commission of inquiry.
Exactly. Like now we're busy seeing I mean, for instance, with COVID, and as you were talking, I was hearing COVID, PPE contracts, digital vibes,
all of those things.
Digital vibes. That still annoys me. I won't lie to you. Like, if you're going to steal money, at least give us a bit of creativity. Like, bonza or you're trying. You know what I mean? Digital vibes. I mean, if you read a list of companies, you can see that that's a joke.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it might have looked good as an advertiser for MTV, but now MTV is no longer on air.
Do you see what I mean?
And therefore, it just shows.
It shows the age of the people who are trying to steal from us.
Well, if you accept any money, that's the same fate that befell 3 Talk when, the Minister of Social Development at the time was explaining what's happening with these new payee, or the payments company that they were going to hire or give the tender to distribute grants. And then she spent R500,000 getting an interview on 3 Talk with Anele at the time. And where's 3 Talk with Anele now? Off air. That
was what's it?
Batabile Dlamini.
Was it Batabile? Okay, yeah.
The one with smaller nyana skeletons.
Everyone has smaller nyana skeletons.
And so we'll see the skeletons that are going to come out after these national states of disaster. I have faith in the Limpopo government to show us another masterclass in corruption and lack of accountability. That's their speciality.
But people disagree with you. She'll say that she's leading a province that's tackling. But I think just so that we're clear, because I want to know the difference between a state of disaster and a state of emergency.
So do I.
Because we know that people like Herman are calling for state of emergencies to deal with immigration, which is different from a state of disaster. So I just looked it up really quickly. So it says that a state of disaster, it's a natural human caused occurrence that causes maybe disease, damage to property, infrastructure, environment, or disruption of the life of a community. Right? It says that the
natural or human.
Natural or human, right? So basically, I mean, that last sentence or disruption of the life of a community, I feel like a lot can be included there. I feel like you can even, if there are riots or something, you can probably declare disaster. It says the national executive is primarily responsible for coordinating measures. So like those regulations that they always issue, like when they said that people can't smoke cigarettes and we can't go buy alcohol, for instance, during COVID. Cabinet ministers, they need to use existing legislation to deal with the disaster, which I think is an important one. We'll get to the emergency now. Regulations are allowed that not only provide relief to affected persons, but also for the control in the affected areas of the movement of people and goods. So that's already I'm already seeing some similarities with emergencies. Then the Disaster Management Act, it releases money and resources from vehicles to emergency personnel to deal with the declared disaster. And it lasts 3 months. You may cut it short at any time and may be extended extended 1 month at a time. Now, the state of emergency, though, it's outlined in Section 37 of the Constitution, and it can only be declared when, quote, the life of the nation is threatened by war, invasion, general insurrection, disorder, natural disaster, or other public emergency, and the declaration is necessary to restore peace and order. It says that it may last 21 days unless Parliament extends it. So remember that the state of disaster can last 3 months and then extended month to month. A state of emergency can only last 21 days unless Parliament basically votes differently, extends it. The State of Emergency Act provides a crucial supervisory role for Parliament, right? Courts empowered to decide whether a state of emergency / regulations are valid. So courts still have a role. Parliament is prohibited from passing new laws, indemnifying the state or person in respect of any unlawful act. So I guess Parliament can't then say, we want to protect, let's say they are terrorists, right? And people agree with those terrorists. They can't go to Parliament and form a majority, I think, to protect those terrorists because the state of emergency is declared, right, against those. These emergency regulations allow for police to order anyone to leave a place if they believe it's for the public, it's for the good of public safety. So basically, I think, from the sense that I get, right, state of emergency, it's a code red situation. As it says, it's threatening basically national security. It's a natural disaster, insurrection, disorder, and it's basically necessary for the country. They must restore peace and stability within the country, right? So when politicians, right, whether it's Herman Mashaba or other groups that mobilize around this issue, like who's the mobilizing people around immigration?
Operation Dudula. Or March and March.
When they organize this and they call for these state of emergencies, right? Where would it fit? Where would it fit legally?
Well, I think that what they're calling for is a state of emergency for the border.
Okay.
They're saying that our border is too porous and we need to send, our armed forces to monitor every inch of our borders. Our ports of entry as well are porous, and we need to monitor what goods are able to travel and also stem the human trafficking that's also happening at our ports, with people being, moved in and out of the country at our ports, in concealed containers and the likes. The drugs that are also coming in from our ports, that's also something that affects us. And we can see it within our coastal areas murder rates. Our coastal areas and our inland areas, the murder rates suggest that there's something happening at the coast that is, causing the violence to, get worse than it is within our inland areas. And I think that a lot of the murders that happen are drug related.
Reminds me of Fadil's ongoing conversations and points he raises around. Yeah.
Exactly. You know what I mean? You can just look at the disparity in the murder rates on the Cape Flats, in the Eastern Cape, as well as, in places like Gauteng or the Free State or even the Northwest, and that shows that something is happening at our coast that does need some urgent relief, and emergency action. And I think those are the things that Herman Mashaba is calling for. As for whether he'll get support for it in Parliament, calling for it, I don't think that, the MK would object to such a call because it seems to resonate a lot with its supporters. I think that the ANC would find a lot of difficulty in objecting to such a call because its voters are also looking for it to be more proactive where it comes to, illegal immigration and the influx control within our country. The DA already sits with the portfolio and the Minister of Home Affairs. And for them and their ambitions within the Western Cape, I don't think they'd be supportive of a call for a state of emergency on border control because, they might lose a lot of their investors that are taking advantage of, Cape Town's property market and displacing residents and gentrifying everything to the annoyance of even, the middle class Cape Townians. Most of them even, being white, they are now feeling the brunt of this uncontrolled immigration and the fact that, our property laws allow foreign buyers to buy land on speculative basis and not really as an investment.
But just to add to that, is you mentioned the support in Parliament. It was the state of a state of emergency needs to be called by the president. So, I mean, it's not even about support in Parliament by somebody.
But it would have to be precipitated.
You've actually got to hold state power.
It would be precipitated by debate. And since the ANC doesn't have, an overwhelming majority, that debate, could persuade a lot of their members to lobby for the president to declare a state of emergency, and especially when their electoral outcomes depend on it. And I think that the way in which Herman Mashaba is calling for it, he's also seeking to use it to campaign on for the local elections. And with the performance of Nasipi Moya in Tshwane, as well as the popularity of their candidate in Ekurhuleni, not to mention Herman Mashaba's own popularity in the city of Johannesburg. I think that they might be using that as a way in which to decampaign the DA, which would be reluctant to lobby on that ticket.
And they're currently the Minister of Home Affairs is a DA minister.
Yeah, and to build also support with the other parties that they're competing with, namely in the EFF and the MK, both parties who seem to be amenable to a working relationship with Action SA.
But the EFF has a very different view on these issues of immigration. Let's not forget that.
As much as they've got a different view on these issues of immigration, I see Herman Mashaba as a moderate when it comes to these matters, and I think that he'd be able to negotiate some sort of compromise with them if they were to be offered, some compromises when the coalition governments for each of the municipalities that they are competing for need to be formed. And therefore, I think he'd rely on his long-standing working relationship with the EFF dating back to the time when he was mayor of Johannesburg under the DA. And they might be able to find each other there.
Immigration, I guess immigration is such a clear one, right? Because, and the parallels with ICE. South Africa, we've got a number of states of disasters declared around different issues, right? The most recent one is gender-based violence. There was one on electricity.
Mm-hmm.
I've even lost count. I mean, but we've got a number of big issues: unemployment. We've got, as we're busy exploring now, what's this infiltration of our entire security cluster, really, by all these other elements. So my then question is, right? A state of emergency empowers the military and effectively the security cluster with a lot of power. To enforce these laws, to enforce whatever the objective is. Which political party or who do you think we should trust? And also let's be practical about who can garner the support in order to wield that power responsibly, right? Especially given some of the weaknesses within our security infrastructure.
Yeah, I think the ANC is too compromised, but also too strong to have any credible opposition in that regard when it comes to leading the country. I mean, the DA is not a credible opposition, or they cannot be put in a position to lead because they cannot get more than 25% of the vote. Not even a quarter of the population or the voting public believes that the DA should lead the country. So that puts them in a compromising position. The MK is too new and they also face challenges of credibility. The FF has never led and they get half the support that the DA does as well. So South Africans in general don't seem to have any party that they trust more than the ANC. And they don't seem to distrust the ANC more than any other party as well. So that is the conundrum that we face. Our current leadership are saved by the grace that we've granted them, to try and progress or to try and reform or to try and, curb corruption, which seems to be endemic. The issue with our security cluster is that there's so many parts of it that are compromised. The president already issuing instructions against the generals, trying to sanction the generals for allowing Iran to participate in military drills at False Bay instead of having just observer status because of how that might affect the latest round of AGOA negotiations, which has been provisionally approved by the House and is now awaiting Senate approval, even though it had more than a 2/3 majority vote in favor in the House. There's also questions about whether there'd be a reconsideration of South Africa's role to play in AGOA. And the US needs South Africa in AGOA. AGOA does not work with South Africa. 60% of the trade on the continent is from South Africa. And that's something that they cannot do without. It makes AGOA ineffective. Does South Africa need AGOA? I don't think that we benefit as much as the US benefits from AGOA. And even those that do benefit from AGOA, there is no trickle down of those benefits into the broader population in South Africa. So I can't see why it is that we're so hell-bent on holding on to AGOA. And judging by the president's response in that regard, I feel like there's no one that the South African public can trust. Not even our judiciary, which is compromised in its own way. And the police have got a monopoly on violence. And what we're seeing now is police on police violence, with police members coming out against each other, even other members of the state or, those who are supposed to oversee policing, people at IDAC, not just IDAC, IPID as well, coming out, with allegations of impropriety or allegations of criminality, within their own ranks and within police ranks. So there's mistrust within the security apparatus across the board. And our president has seemed to lose his grip on those security forces, even though he's brought in, the security cluster under the presidency, which in itself compromises the security cluster because they're unable to perform their first duty, which is, to oversee that the head of state himself is not compromising national security, which is something that they're unable to do. And that's why our national security is so compromised. We're seeing this in our interactions with the United States. It seems like our government seems to be competing for the ears of U.S. Congress and even the House or even the Trump presidency. AfriForum seem to have a direct line to those close within the Trump presidency's orbit, and they seem to be reinforcing some of the stereotypes that have been used to make South Africa look like a pariah state or make us seem anti-American. And meanwhile, we're just upholding international customs, and international law. And we've seen that in our engagements with the United Nations or within the United Nations, where we have been still unable to secure an African security cluster permanent seat. And it seems like the issues that we're raising to the United Nations are falling on deaf ears, even though the votes are in our favor. The Trump administration's been hell-bent to defy international convention and also to, act against international law. Their kidnapping of Maduro, his prosecution
crazy.
As well, the pardoning of the former president of Honduras, who was, tried on drug trafficking allegations,
And the irony of the fact that was it basically the week after captured Maduro? It was certainly within the same month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost a year now. In February 2025, since, the Epstein file promise was made. And to this day, we still haven't had a full drop of the Epstein files, and it seems there's some sort of bipartisan agreement to stall the release of those files because the Democrats don't seem to be fighting for the release of those files as much as they should be. So there are many issues that we're seeing being exacerbated, and the ANC seems ineffective. They're wrapped up in their own internal contestations, and, judging from their January 8th statement, they don't have any ideas on how to take South Africa forward.
I want to, what was so funny, Robert McBride, talking about IPID, he recently went before the ad hoc committee in Parliament to provide testimony around his involvement with him, Paul O'Sullivan. But there was a testimony now of a former acting police commissioner who maybe 2-3 weeks ago in front of the ad hoc committee, and he said when he was asked about when did in his experience when did corruption in the security cluster, when did it become endemic, when did things shift, he specifically referenced the 2007 ANC conference in Bologwane, where Jacob Zuma won and became the president of the ANC. And it's interesting that you mentioned, of course, that MK, for instance, is a new party. We are now waiting to see if the provincial government of provincial unity in KZN survives, or if it collapses. And if it collapses, the MK could be taking over the premier seat and finally having a taste and a test of power in its home base there in KwaZulu-Natal. I suppose my question or my interest, right, is we talk about the ANC correctly, I suppose, because they are leading government. They have been leading government for 30 years, as being weak and ineffective, right, in being responsive to some of these crises. How has Jacob Zuma, right, or rather, how has Jacob Zuma, one, somehow escaped his own legacy, one, and two, what could possibly be different if the MK, whether they took over KZN, because once you take over KZN, they've got access to provincial commissioner. There's a lot of police power at the provincial and the local level, right? So what could be different in a party that's still led by Jacob Zuma?
Yeah, well, I think the most interesting reflections we'll be able to get from a new book that is being authored by Andile Mngxitama, the Guptas versus the Stellenbosch Mafia.
The former was just Andile is the former or the current president. I don't even know if Black
First Land First, he's the president, but he's now in the MK in Parliament.
Ah,
yes.
okay.
So I think that the story of the Guptas in South Africa is one that, you know, has still left many more questions than answers. What was their role? Who is it that they were undermining, and who were their opponents? And are those opponents friends of South Africans, or, you know, are the real state captures? And the state capture, or the notion of a captured state, you know, is something that was new to us when it was first introduced with the State Capture Commission. But now we've started to see what nature of capture has been endemic within our society throughout its history. And I think that the grace that is given to Jacob Zuma is that he assumed the presidency with the state already pre-captured in anticipation for his 2007 victory. And well, the forces that were supporting Thabo Mbeki presidency. And you can see that within Thabo Mbeki's statements, whenever he's speaking about those who supported Zuma, well, from within the ANC and since then as counter-revolutionaries. He even described the actions of July 2021 after the arrest of Jacob Zuma as counter-revolutionary acts. Even prior to that, accusing Jacob Zuma of being a double agent or an enemy spy or collaborating with the apartheid forces. Yet he himself cannot explain why before 1994 he signed a deal with the Freedom Front Plus to grant, you know, autonomy or self-determination to minority groups like Afrikaners, which paved the way for enclaves like Orania and what's the other one that's in Pretoria? Those only Afrikaner.
I mean, the self-determination question, I hear it. I hear it in the sense of, if you want to question Mbeki on that.
No, not just that. I mean, that's just one of the instances. But I think right now the Kampempe Commission is looking into, you know, the what is it? I know it's. I think there were some pardons that were given, and some
the TRC
apartheid crimes, that weren't prosecuted.
Yeah,
and it seems that, you know, Thabo Mbeki's legal team is challenging the validity of you know the case itself, and is also asking for Judge Kampempe to be recused, citing, you know, procedural mishaps prior to the actual trial being constituted and established. And for once, you know, Jacob Zuma seems to agree, because his legal team has also challenged.
So him and Mbeki are agreeing that this thing needs to be collapsed,
or that Judge Kampempe should recuse herself.
Yeah. So, but then again, it's Jacob Zuma. I mean, you've characterized Mbeki's. He's got his own Smolanyana skeletons. Jacob Zuma. Again, he's escaping his own legacy, but his party is on the rise. Let's be honest. It's on the rise. We see it's growing its support across the country, whether it's in by-elections, whether we're seeing little spots of evidence of his growing support. And Mbeki has, you know, called him a counter-revolutionary, of people who supported him, etc., etc. I suppose my concern or my question is, you say he's been provided grace, but how and why how is he evaded his own legacy? What does he have that he can do that? and do you think that goes, that same ability then applies to the MK automatically because he's the president? Or do you think people see those two things as a bit different?
I think the beauty of Jacob Zuma's tenure in leadership is that he's been the most accountable leader. Whether it be facing prosecution, whether it be facing tough questions, whether it be facing protests, he's never evaded accountability.
That's questionable.
One could say he might have evaded justice, but in terms of him being brought to account for each of his actions throughout his tenure as president, and even after his tenure as president, he's been subjected to the most scrutiny. His entire presidency has been scrutinized. And the lack of scrutiny for the other presidencies, whether it be that of Mbeki and even now Ramaphosa, seems to paint them as unaccountable or above the law, or favored. And not favored by the public, but favored by the establishment, which is anti, the progress of the masses of this country. And that's why one could state, or one could see him as evading his legacy. But I think that he's been confronted with his legacy more so than anybody else. And therefore, the confronting of his legacy has allowed people to grow a fatigue for some of the persecution that he's faced, and to look past that. And in instances where, he's been prosecuted, people feel like he's served his time. He was punished for whatever he'd done, and people need to move on. Whereas with someone like Thabo Mbeki, the questions around his tenure, his AIDS denialism, and his treatment policies as well, those questions have gone unanswered, and he's been able to escape a large part of his legacy. And people see that contradiction, and then seem to favor Zuma, who seems to be a more accessible leader than the more aloof.
Zuma, right?
You know what I mean? But no one ever said Wenzenu Mbeki.
Because, okay, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
Let me... I know, I just bumbled myself there quickly. But you're saying that he's evaded, or he's faced accountability. Do you not think that all of this started because in 1999, they accepted bribes from, was it a French or whatever, arms company, in order, basically in the arms deal, look that up if you haven't read it. But he currently, when they say, Wenzenu Zuma, the charges he's evading, or he still has not gone into the dock for the arms deal. He's this entire going on 26 years. He has been avoiding facing the music and going into court and facing trial and going on trial for the allegations around the arms deal.
Yeah, well, again,
and it's the reason why he was found in contempt of court, because it's linked to the arms deal case.
Well, no, he was in contempt of court for the state capture and not appearing at the state capture commission.
Oh, was
even
it?
though, yeah. But when it comes to the arms deal, there was already a commission of inquiry into the arms deal. The matter should have been put to bed.
But criminal prosecutions followed. That's one of the reasons why Tony Ngeni went to prison.
Yes. So
why can't Jacob Zuma go to prison and face the music?
Well, can his trial start? Can we actually have a trial? As much as people can blame him for that, he's not in charge of the judiciary. The judiciary is the one that's guilty in that instance. They're the ones who've been delaying. They're the ones who've been, conceding to procedural mishaps and allowing this whole entire arms deal circus to continue unabated. I don't even think the person who laid the charges that Jacob Zuma is facing right now is still interested in the case. I saw her once when the recusal hearing for the prosecutor was being heard, Patricia DeLille. But since then, she's now more focused on her various portfolios that she keeps, changing within the cabinet. And that whole issue with the arms deal seems to be something that, she's forgiven the ANC for, because, the ANC is no longer with Jacob Zuma. Or is it the other way around?
You know what? Look, if we go back to the arms deal, many will say that capture and corruption started there, right? 1999. One of these former security cluster people say that the security cluster was properly captured after the Polokwane conference, right? In 2007. I'm asking you about the MK and how they would be different. And I go back and I think about this state of emergency versus state of disaster versus nothing at all. And I'm sitting here thinking, will South Africa will we ever be able to use any kind of legal instrument? How will we ever be able to adequately respond in a robust way to some of our challenges if we can't even use a state of emergency as a credible response because our infrastructure of the state is so weak?
Yeah, I think these crises are just seen as opportunities for the state or those within the state, for state officials to find a way to get more money in their own pockets. I see the state in a precipitated collapse, and as
so you say you see it currently
in a precipitated collapse, and the precipitation of this collapse is shown in its failings and the fact that there is no credible force that seems to be intervening or stemming the tide of this collapse. And I think that those in power are willfully overseeing the collapse of the state of South Africa and hoping to benefit from whatever disaster befalls us after this, once the state has completely collapsed. And I don't know what they're hoping will be our saving grace, but a lot of them, have got their kids in foreign universities, in Western countries, and they seem to be hell-bent on jumping ship once we eventually hit that iceberg that we're careening towards.
And last, as we move towards wrapping up, you say that the ANC is too big to oppose, but it's also the reason for many of the crises that we're facing. Do you think that we need to save the ANC in order to begin to tackle some of these challenges?
Look, I spoke about this in our previous episode, actually, last week, Monday. I don't think it's worth saving. I think that the ANC is too far gone. But what I do feel is that there are those within the ANC that know that South Africa is worth saving and that know that, their families depend on us having a functioning country. And I'm hoping, that sanity will prevail and that they will start seeing that if they continue under the current trajectory, there'll be no way in which they can escape that fallout to themselves. Yeah.
So new formations to contest state power, I guess.
Yeah, new formations to contest state power, but I think a new public as well that needs to be appeased. I think people's minds have shifted. I think people have abandoned their previous loyalties, and we've got a much more individualistic public, and it will be very difficult for the call to actions that the ANC has relied on in the past to garner support in the public to resonate right now. People will be looking for what's in their own best interests, and will be even toying with the idea of, entertaining the campaigning from people who were part of, the conservative movement during the apartheid era, just to spite the ANC and to show them how far right they're willing to go to undermine the ANC's, I guess.
Germany, and are we not undermining ourselves?
Unabated.
Hey, yeah, because when we started, I thought, maybe these state of emergencies, maybe it's a way forward. But now I'm doubtful. I don't know what these solutions are. Because at the end of the day, I think it's correct to say that there are people, not just in the ANC, well-meaning people across society that want to save this country, that want to be engaged in this country. We've got a public that is crying out and in need for that. The question is exactly, how are we going to mobilize this public around a common vision to go forward? As you know, the president, they tried to do the national dialogue to try and answer some of those questions. I don't know where the national dialogue process is.
That's failed. I mean, these podcasts are the national dialogue. These episodes that we're doing, the commentary that we're getting, the reactions that we're getting, the clipping that it's inspiring all over TikTok. We're already in a national dialogue, and we're discussing each and every single facet of our country and the goings on and the current affairs. And it seems people are enthralled. You know what I mean? Our news has become more entertaining for people. They're following it like they follow tabloids now, except, these are really serious issues. And I think that a more informed public is going to be much more critical of leadership and much more harsh when it comes to, being amenable to the policy changes that are being proposed. And it seems like there's a lot more discussion and dialogue over each and every single action that our state is, performing. Our white papers are being discussed. There's active and real public participation. And in cases where there isn't or there is insufficient public participation, there are calls to involve the public or calls for the public to either be involved or whatever legislation is being proposed to be abandoned altogether.
So, when do we get to revolution?
I don't know. This might be the year that we see it. I did say that 2025 was going to be a challenging year for South Africa and South Africans. But 2026 is the year where I see, people acting out on their heartfulness.
So, manufacturing consent for the state of emergency that you're speaking about. Huh?
Enough is enough. I'll leave it at that. And I think we should leave it at that for this Monday. And let's catch up again soon. You know what I mean?
Let's catch up again soon.
Yeah, let's hope that Spoo is healthy as well.
Yes. Please, because I'm leaving here with anxiety. I don't leave feeling good and peaceful. I feel like, it's heavy when I talk to you. But
this year we'll continue with or without him. You know what I mean? So at
Exactly.
least our hustlers should rest assured that we're doing everything we can to try and be more consistent. You know what I mean? Even though others are on sick leave.
No, we are moving forward.
No,
We're moving
thank you.
forward. Thanks, Nota.
Thank you so much. Like, subscribe, and please share. And don't clip us out of context.
Well, I don't know if we'll ever get that kind of satisfaction. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you guys next Monday.